Welcome to today's Meet the Author conversation with Tracy Fox. My name is Mary Fetchet, and I'm Executive Director of VOICES Center for Resilience, which was formerly Voices of September 11th. And VOICES provides a wide range of programs and long-term support for victims' families, responders, and survivors. And we assist communities impacted by other tragedies in both preparing for and responding to the tragedy. Our Meet the Author series is one of many programs that we host to promote wellness and build resilience. So today we're thrilled to welcome Tracy Fox, author of Happy Self, a 3-step guide to elevate your inner game. Tracy is an NYU certified executive life coach, relationship expert, and author of 4 best-selling books. For over 20 years, she has mentored an exclusive global clientele of CEOs, elite athletes, well-known entertainers, and top leaders from all walks of life. Tracy teaches a simple process to overcoming limiting beliefs and behaviors, helping her clients, which is you today, create the life they deserve, both at home and in the workplace. A native of New York, Tracy attended Chapin School, Choate Rosemary Hall, and then Boston College. She's been a restaurateur and founder of costume jewelry company that employed over 50 women. And after moving to Connecticut, she earned her coaching certificate from NYU and now works with men and women specializing in helping people maximizing their potential. And I recently attended one of Tracy's presentations and then went on to attend an incredible workshop that was very inspiring. Tracy's no-nonsense approach to achieving our goals, as I said, was really inspiring to me and those in attendance. Now, with all of the horrendous news, I think we can get sidetracked. They're quite the distraction. And so we're hoping that this presentation today will help refocus us in ways we can live our happiest self. So welcome, Tracy.
Thank you, Mary. I'm very excited to be here. Very excited to talk to everybody.
Yeah. So Tracy, I'm going to be moderating the conversation. I have a long list of questions that I'm going to try to get to. And of course, people had submitted questions too. In our time today, we'll try to work through them. Now, you had several professions that I've mentioned in the introduction before becoming a life coach over 20 years ago. Can you describe the role of a life coach and what drew you to the profession?
Well, I can describe it 2 ways. I think I really got started when I was 13 years old because I was a very depressed teenager. And I remember my father came in, who was very worried about me, and he handed me a book called The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And that book literally changed my life. I didn't know that it would ultimately lead me to be a life coach. But in that book, he talked about the power of the created life, that you can have any life you want, and that you have to create it, that we have a power to be enabled, even in the midst of bad circumstances, to create a great life. So that resonated with me at 13. I did go on to have many different careers, which you highlighted. But then later in life, I just knew I wanted to help people. I had thought about maybe being a minister. My mother was a minister at St. Bartholomew's in New York, one of the first women to be ordained in that church. I then thought maybe I should be a psychiatrist or a psychologist or do some work in different areas, a teacher. And then the reason life coaching completely resonated with me because it's all about empowering other people to live their best life. And so I went to NYU, I did all the classes, and it's been history since then. I've lived every minute of it.
Well, it's interesting because you did bring up mental health and what, I'm sure that some of those issues do come up in your work. So what is the difference between a life coach and a therapist?
Well, I think most therapists will spend a lot of time in the details, problems, and drama, maybe looking back, doing a lot of that very important work. What I'm doing is the opposite. What I'm trying to do is help people get a vision for their life. And then what are the steps to create that vision? So I'm all about elevating the conversation to what is it that you really, really want? And then what can you really do about it? And so it's a very empowering and oftentimes a happier path there because we're really focused on those things.
Well, in your introduction to Happy Self, you write about the parable of the man stuck in the manhole and all the people who try to help the man escape. You go on to say that it's the friend that had been in the hole who was able to help the man out. There's a lot of parallels that I see in the peer-to-peer support. And so I'm thinking then when you say you're that friend, have your personal experiences helped you in the field?
Oh, 1,000,000%. I think even starting with being a very depressed teenager, I had a really hard time in college. I just, for whatever reason, just couldn't fit in. I couldn't make it work for myself. My mother, I talked about her being a minister at St. Bartholomew's Church. I mean, I got a call on a Sunday morning out of the blue saying your mother has collapsed on the church steps walking into St. Bartholomew's, and she had a heart attack and died instantly. So, I've had a lot of different tragedies along the way, too many to mention here, but yes, I mean, I think it helps me be much more compassionate and understand a lot of the pain that people are going through. But the upside to that is I know as much pain as you may experience in this world, and there is a lot of pain, that you can still take whatever pain it is and turn it into something amazing. And that's the trick for all of us, to not get stuck in the pain and in the being a victim, but to take that and make it a legacy for something amazing.
You speak of the 3 types of happiness in your introduction: temporary happiness, which is a quick fix, I'm assuming, sustained emotional happiness, and lifelong happiness. Can you define these 3 types of happiness and tell us about the importance of each one? So let's start with temporary happiness.
Well, we all love temporary happiness. I mean, if somebody drives into my driveway right now with a new BMW with a bow on it, I mean, I'll be pretty darn excited about that, right? I'll be temporarily happy. So that's temporary happiness, and we all get moments of that. But of course, it doesn't last, right? It's here and then it's gone. So it's nice, but it doesn't last the test of time. Sustained emotional happiness is lovely too. I mean, that's like having a really good friend or having a marriage or having children. Like there's a sustained amount of time there that is very lovely. But both of those things are still based on something outside of yourself. And when your happiness is based on something outside of yourself, then it can't last the test of time because life is up and down. Relationships are up and down. Sometimes we have enough money to buy a BMW and sometimes we don't. Sometimes our marriages last and sometimes they don't. As we saw this week, you think you're fine and then you find out your child was shot in a nursery school. So you don't know what life is going to bring your way. So the only way to have sustained happiness is to build it from the inside out, because if it's based on things outside yourself, your life is going to be like a roller coaster ride, sometimes very high and oftentimes very, very low.
The subtitle of your book is A 3-Step Guide to Elevate Your Inner Game. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
Well, the book is really based on what I believe as you start to develop the inner strength to have happiness from the inside out. I contend you want to do 3 things, and that's what the book is about. First is to build a sort of a status of core life principles, which we can talk about. The next step is to really get to know yourself. So many people don't know themselves. Their life is about what other people say about them. And so I'm a big believer in taking the time to get to know yourself and set yourself up for success. And then, of course, the last step is to connect to your higher power, whatever that is. we all have a spiritual element to our being. And so why wouldn't we spend some time connecting to our higher power? And I go into many ways that we can do that.
So let's start with, I know you talked about principle and perception, was it those two concepts?
Yes, it's principles versus preference. And what I
Right,
say is most people live one or two ways. Most people live by preference, meaning they get up in the morning, and if their husbands or wives compliment them, they feel great. If they jump in their car and someone cuts them off in traffic, now they're mad. If they go into work and the boss says you didn't do a good job, now they're upset. If they get a raise, now they're happy. And so their lives are always in reaction mode. And again, that goes to what I said before. That's up, down, here, there, going with the wind, going with what your friends say. It's just not a stable life. If you want sustained happiness, it's much better to live by principles. And principles are a predetermined mode of conduct or thinking. So ahead of time, you decide, what do I stand for and what's important to me? And so some examples of principles might be, I am only going to repay kindness. I don't care how many people cut me off in traffic today or how many people scream at me. I am always going to repay kindness. You could have a principle around, I start my day in gratitude. You could have a principle around, I only drink on the weekends because I don't like to drink during the week. It doesn't matter what your principles are. I think what matters is that you have them and that they are core to who you are as a person and how you want to operate in this very precious life.
Well, so that's tied to values,
It
clearly
is.
then.
Absolutely. 1,000,000%. But so many people are afraid to set them because, again, they're afraid, well, what if I set a principle that I'm no longer going to gossip? My friends won't like that. Or what if I don't drink during the week and, you know, then people are pressuring me. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, there can be a lot of things that can take you off course, but the more aligned you are with your own values, I think the more stable you're going to be. And again, the quicker you will have happiness because you will be aligned with who you are, what your vision is for your life, and what your values are.
Well, and you talk a lot about in your book about outside influences. So, you know, just to go back to preferences, you know, that's really the outside influences that are impacting that you're not really don't have any control over. Where I see that, you know, when it's attached to your values, your principles, if you know what your principles are, and that was, I think, one of the challenges that a lot of people had, you know, thinking about that, right, when they're going through that process.
Well, they do. But again, that's why it's so valuable, I think, to spend time with yourself, to get out a piece of paper, or go to a beach or sit on a park bench, whatever it is, and decide, like, what do I want my life to be about? What are my values? And do I need to set some core principles around those? And it has to be separate from what other people think. And I always sort of laugh that one of my core principles is I don't use profanity. And my kids give me a hard time. And every television show has profanity in it now, but it's just something that I'm very comfortable with. But other people aren't so comfortable with it. But I've just decided that's who I am and that's who I want to be. And I'm sure people will give me a hard time for it, but it's important to me. So I just stay the course with that.
Good for you.
Thank you.
In the first chapter, you ask, what do you really want? That seems to be such a loaded question on one hand, but a simple question on the other. Is it more complicated than it seems?
You know, I think this is such a valuable question. I don't think most people ask themselves what they want. I think they get up and they live their life and they're in constant reaction mode. But we have been granted the greatest gift, which is the gift of creation. We're the only species on planet Earth that gets to decide what our life is going to be. And so we can get up today and decide we're going to be generous. We can decide tomorrow we want to be a comedian. We can decide the next day we want to be charitable. Like, we get to decide. And so that's a very exciting and precious thing. And I think the more people that make a real decision at looking at what do they want in this very fragile life that's going by very quickly, I think it's extremely valuable and everybody should take the time to do it. What do I want?
In your life coaching, Is this something that typically people don't really know? I mean, is there time that you spend with that person and really sifting through what their values are, what they want, what their principles are?
Well, I say in the book, and I'll bring it up now, that there was a nurse called Bronnie Ware. She lived in Australia, and she decided to ask people as they were dying what their biggest regrets were. And in sort of descending order, what she found out was that every single person sort of was in the same ballpark. And it was sort of number 5 was, I wish I had let myself be happier. Number 4 was, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Number 3 was, I wish I had stayed in touch with family and friends. Number 2 was, I wish I had expressed my feelings. But the number 1 regret of dying people, and we want to have a moment on this because this was thousands of people that she did this survey with. The number 1 regret of dying people was, I wish I had had the courage to live a life true to myself and not a life that others expected of me. And we need to have a moment on that because, again, we're still here. We have time on our side, whether it's a day or whether it's 30 years, I don't know. But that is a legacy that we need to really be empowered by, which is, why wouldn't we live a life true to ourselves? And when you have thousands of dying people who look back over the landscape of their entire life and think, wow, I was never true to myself. I was only worried about expectations of other people. That's sort of sad. But the good news is we can learn from that. And so that goes to the question of, well, what do I want? What do I want my life to mean? What do I want this very sacred time that I get to choose to be about? And that's powerful and exciting and empowering and all that good stuff. So yes, get out a piece of paper and write down what you think you want.
Which is challenging for a lot of people.
But it's less challenging when you start to look at it. It's more challenging when it's in your head and you're like, well, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want. Well, great, but get out a piece of paper and write, be a possibility thinker. Maybe I want to start a charity. Maybe I want to adopt a child. Maybe I want to write a book. Maybe I want to, eat chocolate cake. It doesn't matter. What matters is you're true to yourself.
Yeah. And do you see with people that can change over time once they start through the process?
Oh, absolutely. Because it depends what stage you're at also. I mean, if you're 25, you might want to get married and have children. If you're 65, you might want to move to Florida and start a charity or play golf. I have no idea. But yes, different ages, different stages for sure.
And then, of course, there's outside influences at different stages in your life. Your friends and your family, are constant, hopefully, in your life from the time you're born to the time that you die. And but different phases and different interests, I think, would probably influence that.
Well, 100%. And it should influence that. I mean, you want to take into consideration people you love and care about. And that would be especially true in a marriage, right? I mean, that is part of making a marriage work is I say 1 + 1 = 1. I've written a book called Happy Marriage. So I do a lot of marriage work as well. And part of that, yes, is taking into consideration what the other person thinks and feels and needs. Absolutely.
So is that a different experience for you as a life coach when you're working with somebody individually versus somebody as a couple?
Well, it is and it isn't. When I do marriage coaching, I actually only do a couple sessions together because if you're having problems in your marriage, I think you're probably having problems within yourself. And so if both people are willing to get out the mirror instead of the microscope, which goes on a lot in marriage, right? Blaming the other person, looking at their faults. I think the more you get out the mirror and you reflect on how am I showing up in the midst of this, even if the other person has some bad behavior, can I still show up as a loving person? Can I still show up as somebody who's patient? Can I still show up as somebody who, wants to put this marriage first? That you're probably going to have a much better time of it. So when I do marriage coaching, we do a session together, then we do a couple apart, come together again. But my whole thing on marriage is, jump into the foxhole together. And yes, did I steal that because my last name is Fox? Absolutely. But I think the key to a good marriage is looking at a marriage is we're in the foxhole together and whatever problems are coming at us, we're kind of shooting them down together. So whether it's, I think you're playing too much golf or you think I'm angry all the time, or you've got a drinking problem, or I'm spending all the money, whatever it is, if we together can see that problem coming at us and together shoot it down, like being in a foxhole, I think you will have a marriage that lasts the test of time.
Great. You use the phrase, as you think, so shall you be. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
Well, I'd love to take credit for that, but it does come from the Old Testament, so we'll give the credit to God. But many philosophers have done a version of this, but I think it's the most important thing I can say to anybody, including myself, which is, as you think, so shall you be. Because what you think about all day long determines your belief system, and your belief system then leads to your actions, and your actions then lead to your destiny. So let me give you an example. If I wake up in the morning and I think, oh my God, it's raining, I'm so depressed, there's nothing to do, why even get out of bed? I'm just so sick of the rain. Well, then my belief system is the day is not good, I'm depressed, and the rain is completely affecting me. Well, what's my action? My action is I'm staying in bed, probably in the fetal position, and what's my destiny? Well, my destiny is I'm alone in bed in the fetal position. Now, if I can change my thought and say, yeah, I wake up in the morning and say, yes, it's raining. Yes, not everything's going my way, but I'm here to do something amazing with this God-given life. And I feel excited about today. Well, then what's my belief system? My belief system is all things are possible. If I believe all things are possible, then what's my action? My action is I'm going out. I never know who I'm going to meet. I never know what divine intervention there's going to be. I have no idea. Serendipity may, show its lady luck on me. And then what's my destiny? My destiny is I'm out and about. I'm contributing. I'm excited about my life, separate from circumstance. As you think, so shall you be. I think it's the most valuable thing I'll say all day here. As you think, so shall you be.
And you talked in your book about us having 60,000 thoughts a day. And you mentioned that woman that you were working with that was trying to shift that, by practicing once a day. And I thought it was so clever that you had her make little Post-it notes and put it on her computer all through the house as a reminder to change her negative thinking. Are there other experiences like that you've had with people and trying to shift their beliefs? I mean, it's probably a good part of your work, right?
Well, it's the whole part of my work, because as you think, so shall you be. So the story around that is I was working with a woman. She asked me to work with her. She called me up. She said, I'm very depressed. I've just lost my husband. I'm lonely. I'm anxious. I'm sitting in this dark apartment and I don't know what to do. So at the time I was doing in-person coaching and I went down to see her and she really was in a very bad state. And I said, well, you're going to have to change your thoughts. And she said, well, my only thought is I've lost my husband. There's no future. I don't want to go out alone and I'm depressed. And I said, well, okay, but what other thoughts could there be? And so we looked at different thoughts. And because if that's what you're thinking all day long, then, again, there's 60,000 thoughts a day from I want to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich to I'm lonely, right? So there's all these thoughts going on, but your brain is like a super duper computer. And so your thoughts do not drop into outer space. They actually get hardwired into the cortex of your brain. And so again, if you think of it as a computer, if I put in 3 + 3 = 7, and I keep putting it into my computer, anytime I go to my computer, it's going to give me wrong information, but it's going to tell me 3 + 3 = 7. Now, that is not correct, but it's correct to me because I have hardwired my computer to say that. That is true too of people who have a lot of negative thinking. If I have all this negative thinking going on, even if I try to be positive for one day, like that woman, she had one positive thought, like, okay, well, maybe I can go out and meet somebody, or maybe I can leave my apartment. That's going to be hard to battle 60,000 of the other negative thoughts she's had continuously. And I think her husband had died maybe 2 or 3 years before, and she was still suffering from it. And so I said, well, is there a new thought you could have? And so she had one new thought, which was, yes, I can get up and I can go out and I can meet somebody and maybe start a new life. So when I went back a couple of weeks later, I was like, how's it going? And she's like, well, it's okay, but it's not great. And I said, well, why? And she said, well, I tried that exercise and I thought it like 3 times during the day. And I said to her, 3 times is not going to work. It is like you are in battle against your negative thinking. Like you're going to have to write it on your computer, sing it in the shower, tell the guy at Dunkin' Donuts, whatever it is, you're going to have to make it part of your life to be like, I have a new lease on life. I'm really excited. I'm going to be out and about, and hopefully I'm going to meet somebody new. Long story short, she did that for about a week or 2 weeks. She did change her thinking. She started to feel alive again. She started to feel like life was full of possibilities. She joined a gym. No joke. She was on the treadmill. A cute little 80-year-old man jumped on next to her. They started walking together. He invited her out on a date. Happily ever after, married. New romance at age 70 and age 80. So
Success.
all possible. Yes. All because she changed her thinking.
I'm glad that you brought up writing, because throughout your book, you have sections where you want the reader to write down answers to the questions that you ask. Is it important for people to physically write things down? And how does that help them on their journey?
Yes, I'm an absolute believer in this. I actually got this from Tony Robbins because he did a statistic that said when you write things down, you actually have like a 90% chance of achieving whatever it is. If you leave it in your brain, right, your thoughts are in charge. But when you write it down, now you're in charge of your thoughts. And it's a very powerful thing. I also think there's a strong connection between the brain and handwriting when you write stuff down. It's all a very powerful experience. So I do think you should write things down, and I think you should put them up, and I think you should look at them. And again, get excited about your life, because you can and you should and you must.
Well, you also publish the gratitude journal.
Yes.
And that's another way of reinforcing positive thoughts.
Well, it's just another thing that, again, what you focus on expands. It goes to what I said. If I think things are horrible and I just focus, and many things are horrible, so I'm not Pollyanna here. There are many horrible things in this world, for sure. But if we only focus on that, then that is going to lay out what our day is going to look like. If we decide instead to start the day in gratitude, just what am I grateful for? I'm grateful I have a house. I'm grateful I have food on the table. I'm grateful I have one friend that calls me up, whatever it is. We start to focus on that, and then that expands. And so, yes, I'm all about gratitude. Every study on gratitude says it will change your life. And if you do nothing else, start your day in gratitude. It will literally change your day. And how you start your day is how you finish your day. So if you get up and just decide, you know what, I'm going to try this for the next 30 days. I'm going to wake up and be grateful for 5 things. You will see amazing things happen.
You speak a lot about the importance of paying it forward, service, and the idea of living by the golden rule. And I know we've found in our research that individuals that were impacted by 9/11, that was really part of their healing journey, the acceptance of the loss or the experience that they witnessed or suffered, but trying to live more with a purpose and trying to do what they can to help others. So I wondered how important it is. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about the importance of paying it forward.
Well, I think it's absolutely essential, because when we're in service mode, we're really at our best selves. And so, again, when you're in service, you're not focused on your own problems, right? You're actually trying to help somebody else. And service is so simple. It doesn't always have to be something huge. I think one of the reasons people get overwhelmed with service is they think, well, I don't want to, fly to Africa or whatever. No, service can be saying hello to your neighbor who seems lonely. It could be not walking by a homeless person and instead grabbing them a cup of coffee and spending a moment. They say one of the biggest things that we all suffer from is loneliness. At some point, Oprah was going to start this campaign. I don't know if any of you remember it, called Just Say Hello, because so many people are lonely. Like, it's really not that hard to be of service to other people. You can be service to people in your family by being more patient, and you can be of service by working in a soup kitchen. It doesn't matter. But when you're in service mode, you are absolutely at your best self. And most importantly, you get the focus off yourself. And sometimes when you're only sitting around feeling sorry for yourself, especially in tough times, it's not helpful. What's helpful is bringing it to other people.
We've all faced hardships in our lives. You talked about some of the hardships that you faced. but some more than others. And I was interested in the chapter about obstacles morphing into opportunities. And you had some great examples of Franklin Roosevelt, Oprah Winfrey, Mother Teresa. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, again, like it's a silly example, but J.K. Rowling, I mean, you know, Harry Potter, every single publisher said no to that. Every single one was like, yeah, no, not interested, not interested. And you know, at the time she was almost homeless. She talks about like living in coffee shops and stuff. And, you know, finally, if she hadn't stayed the course and believed in her dream and stayed with it, then she never would have had the amazing opportunity that it has turned into, both in terms of her own personal wealth, but bringing joy and amazement to millions and millions and millions of people and getting people excited about reading again and all that stuff. So yes, you can't give up on your dreams and obstacles. You know, I'm a big believer in thinking, instead of thinking something is a dead end, you should always think of it as a yield sign to something else. And that can be quite helpful because we do come across things that feel like a dead end, whether it's the death of someone we cared about or a rejection by a romantic partner or, you know, a book deal we didn't get or whatever it is. But if we see it as, wow, okay, this could be a yield sign to something else, then we don't get stuck there. We think, well, okay, well, what else is there? And then it becomes exciting again because, right, it can turn into something else. And so if anyone's feeling like they're at a dead end, I suggest you get that yield sign in your mind and you think, all right, what else is really going on here? And it reminds me actually of a time when I wanted this house. It was a cute little beach house. I wanted it so badly, so badly, so badly. It didn't work out. Somebody else got it. Literally 3 weeks later, Superstorm Sandy happened, right? And that helps me because sometimes also, you know, you never know. We can't see the future. And so I wasn't meant to have that house. On another level, thank God that worked out for me personally because I wasn't in a position financially to buy a house and then not be able to afford the insurance or something else. So if you believe, if you can get into the habit of believing that when obstacles occur, maybe it's an opportunity for something else, again, it can keep you on track, keep you happy, and open up all the other possibilities that are there.
Well, and you brought up the concept of perseverance and how each of these individuals persevered. Do you see that as a quality in people that you work with, and if people don't have that quality, how can you foster it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest problems, that people give up too soon, and it's easy to give up, right? Especially in this, you know, when it comes to obstacles or rejection or anything like that. But you have to persevere because, again, if you go with the thought that you really don't know, then you can't let that be the end of the story, right? You don't know what's just beyond that. And so it's not easy. Most people get stuck there, right? They get stuck in, well, this is my lot in life, or that was the rejection, or my book will never get published, or whatever it is. And it's just simply not true. It's a new opportunity every single day. And so, yes, is it hard to do? But you absolutely must do it. You absolutely must stay the course, get excited, and start the day again and see what opportunities are out there. And that's and that chapter, and I give a lot of examples of people who were at the end of the rope, thought it would never happen. And then, you know, if they had just gone one more hour or one more day, something beautiful happened. So yes, keep going.
Well, and you talk about learning from your mistakes. And I love the example of the individual that interviewed people to better understand what the rejection was about and how they could improve, you know, what they were trying to accomplish. Did you want to talk about that? Do you see that with people?
Restate that.
Well, you talked about learning from your mistakes and what was the rejection related to? And
Well,
a lot of times people don't explore that, right? They just say, well, I was rejected, end of the day.
Yes.
So how do you encourage your clients to, you know, take that rejection and better understand what it was related to so they could overcome the obstacles?
Love that, because rejection and or mistakes can be left there, right, in the dump pile, or because we can look at it and make it into something else. And again, it's such a powerful thing. And if no one gets anything else out of today besides as you think, so shall you be, it's also this: we can take whatever ashes we were given and we can turn it into something amazing. We were given that power. And so whether it's the rejection of a book or the death of a loved one or whatever else goes on, we have the ability to take it and turn it into something beautiful. And I think if people would keep that top of mind, those dead end moments wouldn't feel quite so overwhelming, because yes, you have to have a moment on it, of course. But if you know you have the power to create something else, and that's the difference, we have been given the power to create. And so I would suggest if you get stuck, you get out a piece of paper and you challenge your own thinking, because limited thinking will definitely end the day. And so you want to become a possibility thinker. What other possibilities are there if I've been rejected? What other possibilities are there if I feel like a victim? And get into that mindset, because there's millions of possibilities, but most people don't explore class 1 or 2, but there are always millions of possibilities.
Who or what are the dream stealers?
Oh, there's so many dream stealers, so many. I would say that the first is fear, for sure, right? People are just rattled with fear. And that's a common thing I think we all have in common. And I was thinking about, like, I used to have the biggest fear of public speaking. Now I'm past it, and I had to work really hard to get to this place. But I used to be so afraid of public speaking that I couldn't even say happy birthday at a birthday party practically. So, right, fear can really take you down. But the thing about fear is, and I always think of firemen, and when I say this, but you know, when firemen go into buildings, they're not afraid. They just decide to do it anyway, right? That's what courage is. I'm afraid, but I do it anyway. And so what I would encourage anyone out there, that don't let dream stealer be fear, because the way you get over that is to say, yes, I'm afraid, but I'm going to do it anyway. And if you do that, what happens is, like with my public speaking, I just got up at one birthday party and I said, happy birthday. And then the next time I gave a speech, and the next time, and on it goes. So don't let fear be the dream stealer, but I think it's probably the #1 dream stealer. Because it keeps us small.
What are some of the others?
Well, discouragement, right? I'm discouraged by this. So that's a big one. Limited thinking, for sure, is probably another huge one. There's lots of anger, right? If we're just angry about everything all the time and we feel like life isn't fair, that can be a dream stealer. So we want to be aware of what our particular dream stealer is, and don't let it get in your way, because again, precious life, amazing life, and we don't want to keep it small, because we don't have to, and nor should we.
What about the influence of people around you? Can they be dream stealers?
Yes, absolutely. Because they project on you their fears, whatever it is, right? From, you're not really going to start your own business, are you? Or you better go into finance and not own that taco truck because you'll never make any money with the taco truck. Or, you know, I don't like that boyfriend you're bringing home, whatever it is. There's lots of people who are trying to, and they're probably doing it out of love, and what they're really doing is projecting their own fear onto us, saying, well, I don't think you're going to make it. Maybe you shouldn't do that and stuff. So yes, we have to be careful about that. We have to appreciate advice people give us, but I call that, you take it under advisement. You don't make it the gospel truth.
How do you separate that out? I mean, you can be in a lot of different environments. I mean, it can even be a church environment.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't have to be your home or your workplace, but, you know, even in places that, you know, you might think would be supportive, you know, there can be that obstacle. And as you say, people projecting.
Well, I mean, I think you need strong boundaries. And again, a lot of people don't have strong boundaries, but one of the things I like to tell people is think of a double yellow line down a highway. The reason the yellow line is there is so that those people can be going 80 miles in one direction and we can be going 80 miles in another direction, although we should be going, you know, 60. But it keeps us from crashing into each other. We see the double yellow line. And I think people should use that as their boundary emotionally. So I can look over and think, okay, this person is telling me something. Double yellow line. I will take that over there, that advice under advisement, but I'm not going to take it as the gospel truth and they're in my space. I got to stay in my lane. They got to stay in their lane. And, you know, yes, I will listen to what they have to say. I will take it as information, but I will not take it as judgment. Information, not judgment, is one of the things I say in my coaching. And it's very helpful.
And you brought up the word gospel, which leads me to the next question. You speak a lot about faith in your book. How has faith helped you? And can someone without a particular traditional religious faith still find happiness?
Well, again, you know, it's a matter of how you describe it. I mean, faith is really believing that good things are going to happen, on kind of in a general sense. And then we have real religious faith, whether you're a Christian or a Jew or a Hindu, right? That you have a real feeling about that there's a higher power and you want to practice whatever religion comes with that. So I think faith can be widespread or it can be very narrow if it's more related to a religion. But either way, I think faith is a guiding principle of mine, certainly, to get up every day and believe that I can find something good and worthy, and that I have a higher power that is guiding me. And I think it's really important that everybody explore that, for sure, 1,000,000%. And yes, I think you can find happiness if you're not aligned with a certain religion, for sure.
You talk about forgiveness and grace as an integral part of spiritual life. How does forgiveness impact your ability to have a happy life?
Well, I think, again, forgiveness is everything. It's interesting because whenever I speak and I have a large crowd, I will often end with asking everyone if there's anyone they need to forgive. And do you know that every single hand goes up, every single one? So we're all walking around with feelings slighted by someone, betrayed by someone, hurt by someone. And you know, there's a stat that says if we're not willing to forgive them, we are still thinking about that slight or that betrayal or that hurt 5 to 10 years later. Like, we're still carrying it around. And so again, why would we do that to ourselves when there's a very simple answer, which is to let that go, to forgive that person? And yes, can we stay in our own minds and be like, well, they messed with me and I'm going to mess with them, or I'm going to hold it against them, or I'm going to get people on my side to destroy them, or whatever it is? We can absolutely do that. But it's not good for us. And it's definitely not leading to happiness. And so forgiveness is not a feeling. We're not going to always feel like forgiving somebody, especially if they've really hurt us. It is a decision, however. And then one of the ways I look at it for myself, because it is really hard to do, is I say to myself, do I love God more than I hate the offender? And my answer is absolutely, I do. And so it's much easier for me to let it go. And I try not, I don't even believe I'm doing it by my own strength half the time, because I don't often feel like forgiving somebody that's hurt me. So I just ask God to help me, and I say, have me let this go, because I know I'm doing a lot of things probably, and maybe I'm not even aware of it, when I'm hurting other people as well. Like, I'm sure there's many things I have to be forgiven for. So we're really all in the same boat, right? We're hurting people and they're hurting us. And if we all granted each other more forgiveness, we might have a happier world also.
Is a forgiveness something that you just process yourself, or do you encourage people to reach out to that person and have a conversation about how you're feeling? Is that part of the process?
Well, I think if you can reach out, it's a much quicker process because you get to the matter more quickly. I think that's very difficult. It's, you know, forgiveness is a lot easier if someone comes to you and says, would you forgive me? I really messed up, right? It's a little bit easier then. If somebody has done something to you and they're walking around and either they don't know they did it or they don't care, it's much harder to forgive, 1,000,000%. So if you can reach out and have that conversation, I definitely encourage that. If you cannot, I think you have to really do some self-work and make a decision that you're going to do it, because it'll really be good for your soul and for your peace of mind and for your heart, and then for how you're showing up in the world as a more loving and kind person.
Well, because that's part of the 12-step program, right?
Yes.
To get back in touch with people and ask their forgiveness. And so I just wondered if that's something that you incorporate into your life.
Oh, I would always encourage it. I think it's very difficult for people to call the person and sit down with them, but I would absolutely always encourage it. Yes.
Well, we had quite a few questions that were submitted before, and I hope we have enough time here, Tracy. Number one is any tips with dealing with chronically toxic individuals, including close family members, would be most appreciated. It's getting harder all the time, and it's getting ugly out there.
Yes. Well, again, I think that goes back to really having strong boundaries, right? I'm a big believer in what I call assertiveness. And my definition of assertiveness is I always speak my truth, but I do it with love and respect. And again, I stay on my side of the street. So if I have a toxic individual, I might say something like, listen, I really care about you, but I feel like your comments are sometimes hurtful. And so I might need to, spend less time with you. But I mean, I hope that, we can this, that, and the other thing. Speak your truth, do it with love and respect, stay on your side of the street, because toxic people are just hurt people, right? And they're probably working out their own stuff. And so if they're in your family, it's a little more difficult. But I'm still a big believer in choosing love, meaning do it, whatever you say, do it with love and stay on your side of the street and protect yourself.
How do you move from fear and change your mindset?
Well, as we talked about, fear is a very serious thing and a very real thing. And I still go back to that may be one of those things like the example we gave up, the lady trying to change her thoughts, that you have to, because remember, your thoughts are determining your life. So if I get up every day and I say, like with public speaking, I'll go back to that example. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to get up there and I'm afraid I'm going to mess up and I'm afraid these people aren't going to like me. And I'm afraid I'm going to have dry mouth, or I'm afraid, whatever I'm afraid of. Well, I've worked myself into such a frenzy. There's no way I'm going to give that talk, right? Because I have been telling myself in my brain, fear, 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 fear. And so I think one of the ways you get over fear is to change what you're thinking about whatever it is, and start to think something opposite, which is, I'll do the best I can. I'm here to be of service. I hope these people like me. I'm still going with the example of public speaking, but whatever you're afraid of, I think if you change your thoughts about it and you really work hard at it, and then you step out in faith, right? The first time I had to speak to a big audience, I was still a little nervous, but I had done so much thought work that it wasn't quite as scary. And then the more I did it, the easier it became. And so that's true of all things, no matter what you're afraid of. If you're sitting in your head, you're going to have a lot harder time of it. Sometimes you have to practice what you're afraid of. And so whether that's learning to play tennis, public speaking, having a difficult conversation, I think the more you step out in faith with baby steps and try stuff, the easier it's going to be.
And a related question, having anxiety and nervousness is making it extremely difficult to see beauty in things. How do I begin to change that given my circumstances?
Well, anxiety is a very real thing. And so whoever wrote that question, I want to say, that's a very real thing and a very tough thing. But I also know that anxiety is also, you can help your own anxiety by changing your thoughts again, because often anxiety comes from all the negative thinking that we're plunging into our brains, which then, sets us up for feeling anxious. And so, I don't know if that's a medical thing where you need to speak to someone about your levels of anxiety, but one of the first things I would do is, baby steps. Maybe start your first day with finding the beauty in things, whether it's just a flower that's popped up in your garden or, a dog prancing through a meadow. Like, just really try really hard to focus on what are the good things, and maybe notice how much time you're spending looking at the negative things in life versus the positive things in life, and try and balance the scales so you're focused more on the positive. Because anxiety really is, I'm thinking back, right, a lot of times to what I said last night or some betrayal I had, or I'm looking forward to something I'm nervous about, like a flight or a conversation or whatever it might work or whatever it might be. Whenever we're looking back or looking forward, we're often in anxiety. If we're in the present moment, most likely, if we just sit quietly and notice that we're okay and we're safe and that life is good, we will start to have much less anxiety.
Well, I wonder about the influence of watching the news. I mean, I think I've stopped watching the news because of, just the horrible tragedies and what's going on. And I just wondered limiting some of those things that are going to influence our thinking or making note of.
1,000,000%. That's just such a great thought you have there, because yes, we have all these influences and you have to be very guarded about your influences, from the people you hang out with to the news, the television you watch, the books you read, all of it, right? You have to guard yourself and really think carefully, like, what is giving me energy and what is taking my energy away? And I think that's another valuable exercise, to get out a piece of paper and on the left side, write what really gives my life pleasure and energy. And on the other side, write what is taking things away from me. And it might be a toxic friendship on the bad side. It might be watching the evening news or a political show where everybody's fighting, whatever it is, and then make some decisions, right, where you want to put your time. And if you move over to the left column of all the things that are giving your life energy, and you do more of that, whether it's exercise or getting around some happy people or starting the morning in gratitude, most likely your life is going to turn out to be much better.
Now, a similar question. Have you worked with clients struggling with PTSD, anxiety, and depression? And will your strategies work with this population of people?
I have absolutely worked with that population of people. And, one of the things I like to do, and I'm hoping I'm making it clear today, is to empower people, that often the answers are not always outside yourself, that you're just looking, well, I need someone to help me. And yes, do we all need help? 1,000,000%. But I would like people to understand that you are an empowered person and you have the power within you to make some decisions also. And if you're in victim mode all the time, like, I don't have any power and I'm just a victim here on planet Earth, well, yeah, things aren't going to go well for you. And so you want to turn it around and start to think, what can I do to make my life stronger, more empowered and happier, and start to gift that to yourself, because you deserve it. And so whether it's sending yourself flowers or going to that exercise class or buying that jacket you always wanted, I think a good starting place is advocating for yourself.
And we had a question about what's the difference between happiness and joy?
Well, people, I think it's a matter of semantics. I mean, most people associate happiness with it being temporary and it being linked to something outside yourself, like the BMW or whatever it is. When I wrote Happy Self, I actually was intermingling those words, because what I'm talking about is sustained happiness. And that's really what joy is. Joy is peace in your heart, peace in your mind, and excitement about, the future. That's really what happiness is. And what I'm trying to do is teach people how to be happy/joyful every day of their life, because they can, separate from circumstance.
And we had a question about, why do you believe so many people believe smoking pot or eating gummy or pot gummies will solve depression and make a person happy? You could probably just change the substance, right? I mean, alcohol, whatever it might be.
Well, it's still looking for something outside yourself to make you happy. And so whether it's booze, whether it's gambling, whether it's shopping, whether it's gummies, whether it's thinking some man is going to walk in or some woman is going to change your life, it's all temporary, right? It might for a moment, yes. I mean, people enjoy their glass of wine, people might enjoy their gummies, whatever it is, but is it going to solve the bigger, deeper problem? It is not. You have the ability to solve the deeper problem. All those things are just temporary. And so, yes, do I think many people believe that if they smoke more weed and, take more gummies, will they be happier? To a point, temporarily, but it's not going to do what you want it to do, which is to give you peace for the long haul.
And one of the questions I think you've really answered, but maybe you have more thoughts. I'm not good at, quote, putting on happiness like a garment. How can I rest my thoughts on opportunities to happiness where it is around me? And you talked about, focusing on the positive things.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think it's a big burden to think you have to put on a garment of happiness and walk out there and throw a smile on your face if you're not feeling happy. And nor would I suggest that. But I do think you have to start to do things for yourself that will make you happy. And so one of the things that they've proven over and over again is that one of the best ways to start your day, besides gratitude, is exercise. Because when you exercise, you produce dopamine. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that actually controls feelings of well-being. And I think if people would move more and get out in nature more, turn off that morning news, get outside, get in the fresh air, move their bodies, I think that's a great place to start, right? Because then your dopamine, the dopamine is flooded, and then you can start off on a positive day. And then I would suggest for that person, again, get out that piece of paper and really look at what would make my life happy. Do I need to be in the sunshine more? Do I need to help at the homeless center? Do I need to eat more chocolate? I have no idea, but start to gift yourself some things that will make you happy. 1,000,000%.
And the last question I have, Tracy, is what are some ways to rethink expectations of others so that there isn't disappointment in me, just joy and gratitude for what they are able to do?
Well, that's a very powerful question, because it goes to what I said about the number one regret of people, right? I wish I had been true to myself and not living a life that others expected of me. And that is what that question is about. How can I either live up to or not live up to the expectations of other people? And I think the only way that's going to happen is with an honest conversation. And I don't know for that person if it's a difficult thing to do or not, but I'm all about heart to heart. I call it heart to heart, where you sit down with that person and you say, you have all these expectations of me that I may or may not be able to, level out. And so let's have an honest discussion about that, because certain expectations are okay. Like, could you help more around the house, or, could you be kinder? But, there's a lot of expectations people have of people. Like, I think you should become a hedge fund trader when really all you want to do is own a taco truck, that aren't good and aren't realistic. So I think an honest discussion with whoever is putting too many expectations on you, and see if you can work that out between the two of you. And just remember, the key is to be true to yourself.
We did have one last question that came in. About 50% of the weddings I've attended have ended in divorce. Many of these end after more than 30 years of marriage. It's called gray divorce. What is happening in America with this gray divorce so late in life?
Well, again, I'll just go to John Gottman for a minute, because John Gottman is a marital expert, and he says he can, within a 99% success rate, tell who's going to stay married and who's going to get divorced. And so whether it's divorced in 10 years or divorced in 30 years, it's the same thing. And what he does is he takes people right after they get married and he puts them in a retreat spot and he puts cameras on them. And, you're pretty happy right after you've gotten married, right? Too many bad things happened yet. And there they are, they're swimming in the pool and they're drinking cocktails or whatever they're doing. And what he noticed was, and he gives the example that a man, they come back from the beach and they're in their suite, and the man goes up to the window to make himself a drink, and he looks out and he sees a bluebird, and he says, "Oh my God, it's the most beautiful bluebird in the whole world. Honey, you've got to see the bluebird." And the wife is on the couch and she's reading her Elle magazine. She's like, "Yeah, no, hon, I'm reading my magazine." He's like, No, you've got to see the bluebird. It's the most beautiful thing." And she's like, No, I'm reading my magazine. You enjoy the bluebird." He says one more time, "I really want you to see the bluebird." And she's like, "I told you I don't want to see the bluebird." Okay, great. John Gottman would say they're getting divorced. And the reason he says that is he says throughout the course of a marriage, we're giving each other emotional bids all the time. That was a man's emotional bid. He just wanted his wife to join him at the window, even though she didn't like bluebirds, to sort of align with him around a bluebird and say, "Yeah, hon, that's beautiful," even if it wasn't her favorite thing. And I do think, since I do a lot of marriage coaching, that is what ultimately over time separates marriages. Is we think marriage is 1 + 1 = 2, meaning I do you, you do me, we'll do this life together, we'll have these kids, but we're still our own people. And over time, I think what happens is you get separate and separate and separate. And then, yes, 30 years later, somebody's like, "I've done this long enough. I don't want to do it anymore." And the only way to have that deep foundation that lasts the test of time is that, again, it's 1 + 1 = 1, meaning if you're interested in a bluebird, I will be interested in the bluebird. It may not be my favorite thing, but I'm going to give it my best shot. And I think the more people do that in marriage, the better shot at you having that long-term marriage. So I don't know if it's necessarily about what's going on with the gray population. I think it's probably that people have done 30 years of not feeling 100% connected. Because if you are 100% connected, you're not dropping out of a marriage in 30 years. You're only doing it if you haven't felt connected and you're looking for something else. So I think that's the answer to that. And I do think the divorce rate in this country is outrageous. But again, I think if people took marriage more seriously in terms of we have to align together as one unit, we would see much less divorce.
Well, Tracy, we appreciate so much your generosity and time today. And I wanted to mention, here's 2 of our books, Happy Self, and then the Happy Self Gratitude Journal. And you can buy these at your bookstore or online. Tracy's going to be coming back and doing a live coaching session. We'll be selecting a couple of people that, or as time allows, and that's going to be on Wednesday, April 26th at 12 p.m. I thought we'd end, before I mention our upcoming programs, Tracy, I thought we could end with one of the verses that you have in your book, Norman Peale.
Yeah, so I want to say a couple of things. First of all, thank you very much for having me. And I do hope everyone comes back in April, because we're going to do a make your dreams come true, and we're going to do live coaching. And I'm all about that because, again, life is a very sacred and amazing journey. And why not make your dreams come true? So anybody that has a dream or anybody that doesn't know what their dream is, definitely come back on April 27th. And we're going to make sure, even if I'm only coaching, 5 or 10 people, that everybody gets an opportunity to really think about what their dream is and how they can make it come true. 1,000,000%. So I hope to see you again. And I'm just going to read this from Norman Vincent Peale because it was in the original book my father handed to me when I was depressed as a 13-year-old. And I included it here because I think it goes to what we're talking about today. And he says, the way to happiness. The way to happiness is to keep your heart free from hate, your mind free from worry. Live simply, expect little, and give much. Fill your life with love. Scatter sunshine, forget self, and think of others. Do as you would be done by. Norman Vincent Peale. So if we could just do that, right?
Well, I'm sure that everyone online, as inspired as I was and am about your work, Tracy. And as I said, thank you so much for the generosity of time. And I'll be sending information out to those online about the book. So thanks again, Tracy, and thanks to everyone that joined us here today. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mary.
Bye-bye.